Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lewis. Welcome back to the channel. I hope I find you all in good health. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the jazz albums I've been listening to recently. I'm going to talk about each album in turn and why I would recommend them to you. So first out of the gate is a debut album from 1975, and it's by a gentleman called Milton Marsh, and the album is called Monism. Sorry about the glare. So yeah, this is a really nice album. Partly why I like it is because it comes from a smaller label, and that's not to throw shade at Blue Note or any of those labels of that stature. There's just something for me when I listen to work from the smaller labels or the independents. There's a level of honesty to their productions, which sometimes you take for granted, that somebody has to start somewhere, and this is like their fledgling work. And this is a really good example of a group of musicians who have come together with very little budget, and they've just tried their absolute best. And for me, their best is good enough. This is a really nice journey. It's a really interesting ride, and I would recommend it to anyone who's interested in jazz. Um, yeah, it's a real shame on the part of Mr. Marsh that there isn't an extensive, back catalogue of his work. As I understand it, there are only three albums released under his name, which is a real shame because based on this particular album, I would have projected him to have a really stellar career, but it seems that it turned out otherwise. If you have happened to have listened to his later work, um, and you don't mind, please drop in a comment in the down below and tell me what you think of his later work. Because judging by this album, um, I can only hope that he progressed as an artiste, and he's come up with further outstanding work, because I really enjoy the ride on this one. The tracks that I would recommend from this album would be Community Music, Metamorphosis, and Ode to Nzinga. Now, there are quite a few musicians who contribute to this album. I'm going to pull two names out: Cedric Lawson on bass violin and Don Pate on percussion. From I may be wrong, but I think they're the two names I might have encountered before on other albums. I just can't place what albums they were, but I'm relatively sure that I recognise those two names. But yeah, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of information about this album because it was on a small press. They didn't have journalists following them around. They didn't have photographers in the studios with them. It wasn't that kind of affair. So yeah, it isn't a highly documented album as you would get with something like from Blue Note. But don't let that take away from your experience. If you like jazz and you like honest jazz, give this one a whirl. I certainly enjoyed the ride. The second album today is a 1976 release from McCoy Tyner, and it's called Focal Point. I really do love this cover. When you have it in hand and you're looking at it, it doesn't look quite like what it looks like on the screen. But yeah, brilliant name for an album, and the cover does live up to it in terms of focal point. Your eyes have to kind of train itself to your eyes and brain have to be in coordination to work out what the actual image is. But certainly when close up, you don't get a good you just think it's just like random pixels, but it works out lovely. I certainly like that. Mr. Tyner is one of the most influential pianists in jazz, who employed the use of unique chord phrasings. Now that might not mean much to you. That might just sound like gobbledygook, and I can understand that. When you actually, if you've never heard his style before and you come to listen to it again, you're going to go, oh yeah, you're going to have that light bulb moment, and you're going to say to yourself, that's not quite what I've heard elsewhere in jazz. And that's the point I'm kind of making here. He's truly is distinct. Um, like Thelonious Monk, Tyner never really changed his style over his career. He was so good he didn't have to. He just merely refined his style. Um, so you're in for an absolute treat with this one in terms of piano jazz. It's a really good production, this particular album, and like I'm really quite jealous again if you've never heard his work before that you get the as a first time out with his jazz. This is a really good start. The tracks that I would recommend from this album would be Mes Tres Fills, Indo Serenade, and Theme for Nana. Really good tracks, those. There's some of them are on the longer length, but don't let that put you off. It's certainly, you can hear it on any of the streaming sites. Um, yeah, if you want to encounter really solid compositions of jazz, this is a really good example of it. The notable members of the production and musicians on this particular album are Orrin Keep News, who's the producer of this album. Like I was saying with earlier episodes with Creed Taylor, when you see Keep News's name attached to an album, you're pretty much guaranteed that it's going to sound really nice. That's like a seal of approval. I can't think off the top of my head Keep News album which disappointed me, where I just flatly refused it. So yeah, I guess it can happen, but I think his ratio of putting out their really good jazz albums is like really high. Notable musicians would be Gary Bartz on clarinet and sax, and Eric Kamal Gravatt on drums. Now, I've never heard of Mr. Gravatt before, but the, the gentleman sure can play some drums. Yeah, I was blown away by his performance. Really, really solid. So yeah, both on CD and vinyl, you should be able to find these ones relatively easy and for reasonable prices. Again, have a listen on some of the streaming sites. It should be relatively easy to hear them. I was blown away by this album. I think it's super clever without being earnest or full of itself. It's just really good jazz. So yeah, that's the second album for today. The third album for today is a 1963 release, and it's by a gentleman called Walt Dickerson, and it's entitled To My Queen. This is a completely underrated album by Mr. Dickerson, who plays vibraphone. Just should mention that this is Mr. Dickerson's wife who's on the cover and his inspiration for this album. And when you do hear this album, you'll get to realise and understand and sympathise for why he wants to have his wife on this album as the cover. This is a superb set of tunes. It's more like an EP because it's like a 3-track album, but those 3 tracks are absolutely outstanding, first rate, top tier. He employs the vocabulary of music to symbolically express very personal emotions and thoughts. So I guess that's what most musicians are trying to do, particularly in jazz, but he really does a good job of it here. I'm only frowning because I'm remembering how good this album actually is, and it's a real shame that it's not talked about more than what it actually is. But you know, I'm bringing it to your attention, and I would say listen to it on one of the streaming sites. Um, yeah, for vibraphone playing, which is normally synonymous with jazz fusion. Yeah, you're in for an absolute treat with this one. Um, what tracks would I go for? I would go for To My Queen and How Deep Is the Ocean. They would be my two picks from this particular, more like an EP, but the tracks themselves are pretty long. Um, just listen to the whole thing and, you know, let me know what you think. I just think this is superb, and I'm super glad it's in my collection. Um, yeah, I don't have enough of. I've got loads of sax, loads of drumming, loads of trumpet, but in terms of vibraphone, I think you know, there's some Lionel Hampton in there, but this is more the kind of style in vibraphone that I actually like. I was simply blown away by this production. Um, yeah, go out and get it. I think it's pretty much a no-brainer. So that's going to be today's final album for today. Um, don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about some albums today. Um, yeah, feel free to comment down below if you've got any observations. Again, as I said in the previous episode, I'm trying out a slightly different format where they're shorter episodes, and hopefully this suits the audience more than the longer ones. So we'll give it a go, see what happens. All right, until the next episode, look after yourselves, and I will see you next time out. Take care. Bye bye.